I paid $65,000 to be erased from my own brother's wedding, and the moment I realized it, something in me snapped so cleanly that the echo still rings in my bones. My name is Clara Mitchell. I'm 34, the founder of Aurora Grand Hotels and Celestial Catering, names people in my city say with a mix of respect and a little fear. I don't scare easily. I built an empire out of a bankrupt lobby and a cracked marble staircase. I can negotiate with suppliers who think no is a starting place. I can smile at unreasonable guests until they forget how to be unreasonable. But nothing in business prepared me for the day my brother looked at me and, without moving his lips, told me I didn't belong. Ethan and I grew up in Providence in a 2-bedroom apartment that shook whenever the buses rattled by. He's 2 years older, which was just enough for him to take the job of big brother as if it came with a badge. When our parents started fighting, he would tug me into our closet and whisper a running commentary about the superhero comics we loved, turning the slammed doors into sound effects. When the divorce papers arrived, I was 12 and he was 14. We learned to speak the language of custody schedules and pickup times before we had learned how to do taxes. Our father buried himself in client calls. Our mothers started measuring time in shifts, then double shifts. It fell to us to exchange messages between estranged grown-ups. Tell your mother I can't switch weekends. Tell your father he forgot the check. We became a 2-person lifeboat rowing through other people's storms. Money was tight. By 16, I was refilling coffee at a diner, the kind of place where regulars leave quarters stacked like cairns under their cups. Ethan stocked shelves at a grocery store. On paydays, we spread our wages across our bedroom floor, crumpled bills, coins, a lottery ticket one of his coworkers had given him like we were divvying treasure. You and me, he'd say, tapping his finger against my knuckles. We make it work. Always, I went to college for hospitality management because the first time I stepped into a grand hotel lobby, I felt something unclench inside me. The hush, the soft lamps, the promise that everything had a place. Ethan didn't go to college. He went to work construction, then site management, then running crews. Every month, he sent me a piece of his paycheck with notes like, buy the expensive textbook. You're worth it. When I wanted to quit my freshman year, he reminded me that we had survived worse than finals. I started on the front desk at a boutique property my sophomore year and fell in love with the choreography of it, housekeeping radios, bell carts, the quiet handoff of a room key like a spell being cast. I was good, and I was loud about being good. I learned the night audit. I learned why people travel and what they need when they do. By 27, I had saved enough and borrowed more than enough to buy a decayed historic hotel on the edge of downtown that everyone else had given up on. The Aurora Grand. She was a mess-peeling paint, chandeliers hanging at uncertain angles, wallpaper that looked like it had been taught to sigh, but beneath the ruin, she still had her bones. For 2 years, I took catnaps in the linen room and knew the building's groans the way you know the sounds of someone you love breathing. I learned to read blueprints, fight City Hall, and talk to electricians like they were surgeons and my patient was on the table. Ethan was there every weekend with his crew, fixing what could be fixed, telling me what couldn't, and refusing to bill me for either. My equity, he'd say and grin. Pay me when you're on the cover of something glossy. We made it. The first year we broke even, I cried in the freight elevator. The second, we turned a profit. By the third, guests were saying Aurora Grand the way you say home. I leveraged that glow into a second property, then a third. Celestial Catering followed a kitchen that could design a menu around a memory and serve 200 plates at the same moment, still hot and still beautiful. My parents watched from their separate tables. My father started inviting me to dinners with clients, a proud smile settling on his face like a suit he hoped still fit. My mother grew competitive in small ways that hurt more than they should have. I thought you'd open a bakery. That's more, manageable. Ethan never changed. He was my fix-it call at 2 a.m., my Tuesday night takeout, my tether. He kept his promises like a religion. Until he met her. Sienna Vale arrived in our lives the way a perfume arrives in a room, sliding in ahead of her, insisting on being noticed. She walked through a charity gala my company catered like she owned the evening. When Ethan introduced me, she smiled the way a cat smiles at a bird. Clara, she said, drawing out my name. The hotelier. Charming. She didn't shake my hand. She glanced at it and let her eyes flit past. Her lipstick matched her shoes. Her last name matched the donor wall. Her mother, Margot, was threaded through every cultural board that mattered. Her father, Leonard, owned a chain of luxury dealerships. They spoke of summering like it was a verb handed down with the family silver. Ethan fell hard and fast. Suddenly his boots were polished to a shine I'd never seen. He traded his pickup for a leased SUV that knew more about parallel parking than he did. He stopped eating pizza with me on Tuesdays because Tuesdays were now for members-only tastings. It's networking, he said, a little breathless. They know everyone. They know themselves, I said, and he laughed like I'd made a joke. Sienna knew how to open doors, but she also knew how to shut them in people's faces. In the first month I knew her, I watched her snap her fingers at a server twice, say, the adieu, to a woman older than her mother, and tell a valet, you nearly scratched the wheel. Do you know what these rims cost? The words rolled off her tongue with habit. She was civil to me in the way you're civil to the manager of a restaurant when you want a better table. Polite, distant, a performance. Then came the call. She said yes, Ethan told me, so full of joy that it tinged even my cynicism a soft blush. He had proposed on a private pier at the Valles Lake Estate while a string quartet played an arrangement of her favorite movie theme. There were rose petals. There were lanterns swinging in the night breeze. There was a ring he could barely afford that looked like it could buy a small island. He was incandescent. I was wary. But love makes you bite your tongue and smile until your cheeks ache. Have you picked a date? I asked, writing a note on my desk blotter to send him champagne. June, he said. Margot says June or December if you want the right people to be free. The right people had begun to pop up in his sentences like dandelions. They toured venues that lived on their reputation and their price tags. They ran into the two problems people always run into, the calendar and the bill. We can't get the dates we want without selling a kidney, Ethan admitted, his voice tiny through my phone. I heard the shame in it how he hated that he couldn't hand Sienna a world without friction. The Aurora Grand is mine, I said. I can give you the Friday night setup, Saturday ceremony in the garden, reception in the ballroom. We'll do the tasting with my executive chef. Celestial can handle anything you dream up. There was a quiet stretch where I imagined the expression on Sienna's face. Maybe, Ethan said finally. Sienna wants to see it. They came on a Wednesday afternoon with their planner, Talia Ross, a woman whose hair was the exact color of a copper pan and whose calendar could probably summon rain. Sienna walked through my ballroom as if it were a listing photo she was considering lowballing. The walls, she said. They're more ivory than white, and white shoots better. The chairs are tired. The drapery is heavy. Mother? She and Margot did a slow, synchronized turn, murmuring to each other like critics at a gallery, making notes. We can design lighting to read pure white on camera, I offered, already building solutions in my head. We can do custom chair covers or rentals. Drapery panels can be swapped. Your palette is dash. Sienna showed me a digital board full of lilies and glass, dew and chrome. Ethereal, she said. Tasteful, but expensive looking. Ethereal is a budget category all its own, Margot said, almost fondly. Talia slid a preliminary estimate across the table. Even with my owner pricing, it made Ethan go ghostly. He stared at the page as if numbers could be negotiated with willpower. Sienna's face didn't change at all. I heard myself say, the part of me that had always been able to spot fire before it reached the curtains smelling smoke. $65,000 toward the venue and catering. My gift to you both. Ethan shook his head immediately. Clara, no. Margot's expression said yes before her mouth did. Sienna wrapped a cool hand around my forearm. That is generous. Thank you. I signed the paperwork myself. The deposit hit the ledger. We set the date and the menu tasting. Talia sent timelines. We were a machine. Then, inch by inch, I felt something slither. I wasn't included on emails I should have been on. Meetings were scheduled with my staff that I learned about after the fact. Sienna demanded that the kitchen produce 15 distinct tasting menus over 3 weeks to clarify her palate. My events manager, Marco, started carrying stress in his shoulders like he'd been taught to hold weights there. There, exacting, he said politely, which is hospitality for impossible. I reminded myself it was for Ethan, who had always run toward my fires. I breathed through the entitlement like I was teaching lungs how to ignore smoke. Invitations went out in theory. At 3 months to the wedding, nothing arrived in my mailbox. I told myself it was a formality I didn't need. I was the sister and the venue owner. But then my cousin Lila left me a breathless voicemail. Your brother's invitation is the prettiest thing I've ever seen. Did you see the gold leaf? And Sienna wrote the sweetest note about how she can't wait to be family. At 2 months, my aunt texted me a photo of her invite with 3 heart emojis. At 6 weeks, I stood at Marco's desk and asked to see the early draft of the seating chart just to check table spacing. He swiveled his screen, cheeks pink, and I scanned for my name with the kind of dread that ballrooms learn to hold for you. I wasn't on it. Not at the family table. Not anywhere. It's a placeholder, Marco said quickly, seeing the air leave my body. These shift right up until print. Right, I said, and smiled until he believed me. The bridal shower happened the next weekend at a country club where people go to be seen being seen. I know because it appeared on 3 Instagram feeds I don't follow, but that were shown to me by 3 different employees. In the photos, Sienna glowed. Margot radiated ownership. Ethan appeared in 2 pictures, carrying boxes, out of focus. I texted my brother, "Do I need to plan a dress color that won't fight with the bridesmaids?" He responded an hour later with, "We're sorting a few details." I stared at the screen until the words flattened into pixels. The call came on a Tuesday, the day I hold budget meetings because money and Tuesdays go together in my head. MS. Mitchell, a crisp voice asked. "This is Talia Ross regarding the Vale Mitchell wedding." "Talia," I said, stepping into the hallway. "What can I do for you?" "Are we adjusting counts?" She cleared her throat. I was asked to communicate an update. The couple has revised their guest list. Your dash, the pause lasted an hour and 5 seconds. You're no longer invited. My body did that thing bodies do when reality steps 10 inches to the left. Every sound in the corridor got loud and then far. "I'm sorry," I said, very politely, "the way you say I think you've set something on fire." They still plan to move forward with the event as contracted, of course, Talia said in a rush, and the deposit is non-refundable at this stage, per the agreement. They wanted me to assure you that your gift remains very meaningful. I held the phone away from my mouth and looked at the call timer, as if time itself could confirm that I was awake. "Who wanted you to assure me?" I asked, my voice steady because habit is a kind of spine. "And thus, Vale," she said. "And her mother." They said Ethan is aware. They said Ethan is aware, I repeated, because sometimes repeating a sentence is how you trap it and watch it wriggle. What reason did they give? It was framed as a matter of atmosphere. They're concerned that your role as venue owner could be confusing for guests. There was a comment about wanting to avoid any misperception that you were working the event. Talia's voice slid on the last words, as if they'd been greased with shame. I thought of all the nights I had peeled off my blazer in a storage corridor so a crying bride wouldn't see me sweat. I thought of Ethan's whispered, "We make it work." I thought of $65,000 buying me a seat at a table someone had already decided I didn't deserve. Something hot and bright uncoiled in my chest. "Talia," I said. "I appreciate the call. One detail you might not be aware of. I own the Aurora Grand and Celestial Catering. I'm not the manager or the coordinator. I'm the signature on the checks and the contracts." Silence. Then a whispered, "Oh." "In the binder on your desk," I continued, using the calm cadence I use when I'm saving a situation someone else has set on fire, "there's a contract with my signature and Ethan's. Section 14 is our brand protection clause. It gives us the right to cancel an event if client conduct conflicts with our values respect, transparency, integrity, and I'm invoking it. Please let MS. Vale and her mother know that unless I receive a written apology and a restored invitation by 5 o'clock today, their wedding will not take place here." "You can't dash," she began reflexively. "I can," I said, not unkindly. "And I will." I ended the call and stood in the quiet of the corridor until I could feel my feet again. Then I went back into the budget meeting and reviewed line items while the air vibrated around me like a wire pulled tight. My phone erupted at 4:07. Ethan, then Sienna, then Margot, then a number I recognized as Leonard's assistant. I let them ring. At 4:55, my assistant buzzed. Clara? The Vallas are here. With Ethan. And your parents. They're asking for you. Conference room C, I said. My office is where I do human things. Conference room C is where I do business. They filed in and arranged themselves like a painting. Sienna's makeup was perfect, but her mouth was a thin red line. Margot stood stiffly, fingers clamped around a handbag that cost what a used car costs. Leonard looked like a man who believed dollars could turn into solutions if you glared hard enough. My father had his lawyer face on, which is to say a face that looks fair until it isn't. My mother looked out of place and painfully aware of it. Ethan had the face of a child who has done something unforgivable and is hoping it will be forgiven. What in God's name do you think you're doing? He asked, because anger is easier than confession. Enforcing a clause you agreed to, I said, and took my seat at the head of the table. Margot glanced at Leonard, then at me. This is a misunderstanding. Guest lists are fluid. We were streamlining. By streamlining, you mean trimming the groom's sister, I said lightly, after accepting $65,000 from her. In a building she owns. To be catered by a company she owns. It was a gift, Sienna said, finally letting everything she'd been containing leak into her voice. Annoyance, entitlement, the impatience of someone used to a world that yielded when she knocked. Gifts don't come with terms. Gifts often come with relationships, I said. This was both. Leonard put his palms on the table, leaning into his size. We have a contract, MS, Mitchell. We do, I agreed. I suggested you revisit Section 14 before declaring victory. Marco stood in the doorway, a quiet, loyal shadow. Talia had come, too, her copper hair pulled into a taut knot that said she regretted taking this job very much. I asked them to stay not to intimidate the Vallas, though it did, but because sometimes staff need to see you draw a line for their sake as much as yours. My father cleared his throat. Clara, maybe we can talk privately? He didn't like conflict that smelled like family. To his credit, he didn't flinch when I said no. This is simple, I said. I will not bankroll an event that banishes me. I will not pretend I am furniture in my own ballroom. If there's an apology by 5 p.m., and if the invitation stands, we proceed. If not, we part ways today. You'll still owe the vendors you've booked, and I imagine finding an available venue on 10 days' notice will be educational. Margot cut a glare toward Ethan, a tiny, surgical thing. Handle this. He stared at his hands. I thought you'd understand, he said finally, and the 12-year-old inside me who counted coins with him flinched. It's not personal. It's optics. Sienna's world dash, I'm not an optic, I said quietly. I'm your sister. Sienna's mouth twisted. This is my wedding. And my brother, I said. Talia, who had been silent, spoke in the tone of someone saying the brave thing after watching everyone else choose the easy thing. For the record, MS. Vale instructed me to call Clara and rescind the invitation while confirming the deposit would remain. She said Ethan was aware. Everyone's eyes slid to Ethan. He looked at Sienna. She lifted a shoulder as if to say, You want it in. This is in. The room went soft around the edges. My mother surprised me by stepping to my side. This is wrong, she said to Ethan, voice trembling but clear. Whatever club you're trying to enter, it's not worth this. Leonard exhaled sharply, the sound of a man annoyed that a conversation had chosen ethics. What will it take, he asked me, to keep the event here? A real apology, I said. Not whatever your council drafts. My name on the guest list and a place to sit that isn't in a corner behind a pillar. Public acknowledgement that the venue and catering were a gift from me, because if I'm going to be used, I'd at least like the truth to show up in print. And respect. Actual, practice respect to my staff, to my work, to me. Margot made a noise like a kettle about to boil. Leonard held up a hand. We'll do it. Sienna whipped her head toward him. Father, no dash, he cut her off. We will do it. Then to me, is that sufficient? It's a start, I said, not looking away from Ethan. Do you want me there? Or do you want me to disappear so the pictures look cleaner? He met my eyes, finally. There was love in them, and there was fear, and there was the boy he had been, the one who would have shared his last cookie with me even if I hadn't been hungry. I want you there, he said. I lost the thread. You dropped it, I said, because precision matters. They filed out, bristling and muttering and calculating. Ethan lingered. I'm sorry, he said, and for once there wasn't a but, hitching a ride behind the words. I don't recognize myself lately. Find him, I said. Before you promise to love and honor anyone else, the apology arrived that night. Ethan's was handwritten and messy, like all the best things he ever made. Sienna's read like a statement, elegant and chilly, full of passive constructions that tried to make actions sound like weather. It was enough. We moved forward. Marco rallied the staff. Talia, chastened, became a better advocate for sanity. The kitchen ran a final tasting that made Sienna's eyes go wide despite herself. I slept like a guard dog with one ear open. At the rehearsal dinner, I wore a dress the exact color of Colne. Heads turned as I walked in, not scandal, just curiosity, the way people watch a tightrope walker. Sienna greeted me with a frostbitten smile. Margot pretended to forget my name. Leonard shook my hand like a man who knows a worthy opponent when he meets one. Ethan hovered, then whisked me onto a terrace under string lights where the night smelled like rosemary and expensive perfume. Do you remember the time we slept on the floor of the living room because the air conditioner broke and the fan only reached that far? He asked, leaning on the railing as if he could lean on the memory. You were mad because the floor was sticky. You bribed me with freezer pops. You insisted on the purple ones, and I traded you because you hated grape. I still hate grape. He went quiet. I don't know if I can do this, he said. Not the words I expected to hear less than 48 hours before vows. It's normal to panic, I said, because it is. Cold feet are practically a wedding tradition. This isn't my feet. It's everything. The way she speaks to people. The way I let her speak to me. I keep thinking this is a test I have to pass, and if I pass it, I get a life, and I just realized I already had a life. I liked it. You can still have it, I said, though I didn't say how expensive it might be to buy it back. We'll talk after the ceremony, he said. I can't blow up 2 families at the rehearsal dinner. The morning of the wedding was made in a lab blue sky, a breeze that made the garden flowers nod once and then hold still, the kind of light photographers pray for. The ballroom had become a dream of white and glass. The aisle was a path of petals. The band tuned in a side room. The kitchen moved like a ballet behind the doors. I sat in the front row, human this time, not furniture. Margot glared at me. Leonard inclined his head. Talia squeezed my hand in passing. Sienna appeared at the end of the aisle on her father's arm, and everyone breathed like they were seeing a skyline. She was exquisite. It's possible to be cruel and still turn a room into a hush. Ethan stood waiting, handsome in a tuxedo he had never looked comfortable in, a bright, scared boy inside a very fine suit. The officiant spoke. The words gathered. The vows rustled in pockets. Then came the line that lives for drama. If anyone here knows of a reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace. No one spoke. Not a cough. Not a dropped program. But Ethan turned his head and looked at me. I saw something settle in his eyes, the click of a decision, the shape of an exit. He turned back to the officiant. I can't, he said. At first, people thought it was a joke. Then someone laughed once, too loud, the way people laugh when things slide sideways. Sienna's grip on her bouquet tightened until her knuckles went the color of her flowers. What are you doing? She whispered, the mic catching the edge of it. I'm sorry, he said, and the microphone made it a confession that belonged to everyone. I'm sorry for waiting until now to realize this isn't a life I can keep pretending fits me. I haven't been honest with myself or with you. I've hurt the person who stood by me through everything trying to become someone I don't even like. I won't keep going through doors I only get to walk through if I leave myself outside. The room made a sound like a wave when it hits rocks. Sienna turned toward the officiant. Fix this, she hissed, as if a ceremony were a machine with a jam she could clear by throwing money at it. Ethan stepped off the platform, walked down the aisle that had cost more than we paid for our first car, and came to me. He took my hand, and the trembling in his fingers made something old and brave in me stand up straight. We walked out together. Behind us, outrage bloomed. Margot started saying the word lawsuit to anyone who would stand still. Leonard began playing whack-a-mole with crises. Guests who lived for gossip fed themselves with both hands. The band put down their instruments. The kitchen waited. My staff looked to me like birds waiting for a storm to make up its mind. In my office, Ethan dropped into a chair and pressed his palms to his eyes. "I'm going to be broke," he said, half laughing, half choking. "And unemployed. And exiled." "You're going to be okay," I said, because I knew how much it means to hear it said out loud. He lifted his head. "She was going to turn me into someone I couldn't stand." "She didn't have a monopoly on that power," I said gently. "You handed her the tools." "I know." He looked at the ceiling. "I need to apologize to your staff. To Marco. To Talia. To you. God, especially to you. You already did the hardest thing," I said. "The rest is paperwork." The fallout was tastier than the canapes we didn't serve. The Vellas demanded refunds from anyone whose invoice had the nerve to exist. They threatened and blustered and discovered that contracts are not gossip signatures hold. Ethan promised to pay them back for what they had covered on the condition that everything that had been gifted by me was no longer part of the ledger. Leonard's lawyer called my lawyer, and they spoke in a language of clauses and costs, and when the calls ended, the numbers were smaller but still loud. Gossip traveled like electricity. Some people shook their heads and sucked air through their teeth and told stories at dinners that made them feel important. My business did not wither. If anything, something about the way we held the line, served the appetizers to guests who chose to stay for the band we paid anyway, and treated even the furious with courtesy made the phones ring more. "I heard what you did," a new client said. "I want the team that knows when to walk away." A week later, Ethan and I were back at our Tuesday night table. We ate dumplings and laughed too loudly. He told me he'd gone back to the job site and the ironworkers had handed him a cupcake with a plastic ring stuck in the frosting. "They called it my freedom donut," he said. He looked 10 pounds lighter in guilt and 20 pounds heavier in spine. "I met someone for coffee," he added tentatively. "Maya. City planning. We talked about zoning and dogs and how grape popsicles are the worst." "Maya Chin?" I asked, amused. "I've submitted permits with her. She's brilliant and refuses to be impressed by anyone who expects it." "That," he said, a little wonder in his voice, "is exactly it." 2 months after the non-wedding, Margot called me from a number I didn't recognize and introduced herself as if we hadn't met. "We'll be seeking damages," she said without preamble. "Your little stunt cost us." "Your attempt to blackball the venue owner from her own building was a stunt," I said. My response was a boundary. "You'll hear from counsel." I already did. And then one afternoon, 4 months after Ethan walked away, my front desk called up and said, "MS. Mitchell? There's a MS. Vale here to see you." I considered pretending to be busy forever. Curiosity is a door that opens even when you swear you've locked it. Sienna came into my office without her armor. No designer sheath, no stiff blowout, no perfect mouth. She wore jeans and a soft sweater, no makeup except the sort meant to apologize. She sat when I gestured and folded her hands as if she didn't trust them. "I'm not here to fight," she said, "or to ask for money. I came to say I am deeply sorry for how I treated you." The word sorry isn't enough, but it's the word I have. I waited. Silence is a generous thing when you use it right. It leaves space for someone to decide to be honest. "The day Ethan left me," she said, "I decided to replace him before the flowers even wilted. My mother set me up with a man who owns a fund and speaks in acronyms. He proposed after a month because it looked good on paper. I overheard him tell a friend I'd be polished in a year and manageable in 2. It was like a slap I'd been bracing to deliver and accidentally took myself. I started therapy. My mother is furious. My father sent me a text that said, "I should have said no to your mother years ago." She reached into her bag and placed an envelope on my desk. A cashier's check slid halfway out, $65,000. "This belongs to you," she said. I told myself it didn't because pride and legalese and other flimsy reasons. But it does. It always did. I touched the edge of the check and let my fingers rest there. Thank you, I said. It felt like someone had opened a window in a room I had convinced myself had enough air. I don't expect you to like me, she said. I don't like me yet, but I want to. You can, I said, if you do the work. I'm trying, she stood. Please tell Ethan I won't contact him. He looks happy. That matters more than I expected. After she left, I stared at the check until the numbers meant less and the gesture meant more. Then I walked downstairs and found Marco in the banquet office. I want to start a fund, I told him, for couples who are rich in love and poor in power. Venue and catering covered. Applications judged on character, not centerpieces. We'll call it the True Vows Grant. Boss, he said, eyes shining. That's very you. Ethan and Maya fell into something soft and true. No grand gestures, no quartets. When he proposed a year later, it was in the community garden around the corner from his apartment while bees dozed in the lavender. He asked me to stand beside him as best woman, and I said yes with the kind of tears that make mascara irrelevant. We held the ceremony in the courtyard of my newest property, string lights scalloping the night. Maya wore a dress that made her look like herself. The vows were short and real. We served the kind of food you dream about later. Before the music started, Ethan took my hand and squeezed. You saved me, he said. Not just from a wedding. From disappearing. You jumped, I said. I just showed you where. The year after that, the grant paid for a teacher and a paramedic to promise each other a life. The bride's mother hugged me so hard I squeaked. We were going to get courthouse cupcakes, she said. This is a story. We untied the bow on a box of fresh beginnings and handed it to them, and I thought, this is what money is for. As for my parents, they surprised me. My mother apologized for letting her insecurity hold hands with her pride for too long. My father, who measures things in billable increments, started measuring progress in conversations where he listened more than he argued. We ate dinners without pretending not to remember the complicated times. The four of us were never going to be a postcard. We didn't need to be. We became a table where everybody brought something and nobody left hungry. People still ask if I regret blowing up a society wedding. I didn't blow up anything. I declined to furnish a room where I was unwelcome and then watched the truth walk in and flit the lights on. I'd do it again, though I hope I never have to. I learned to trust the smell of smoke in my own nostrils. I learned that family said through gritted teeth is just a word, and family said with your body when you show up at 3 a.m. means something. I learned that respect is not expensive to give but very costly to live without. Sometimes I think about the first night I had the Aurora Grand's keys. I stood in the lobby alone, the chandeliers off, the marble dull, and I said out loud, I'll make you proud. I meant the building, but maybe I meant myself. The lobby is bright now. The marble gleams. We host ambassadors and authors and people who loved each other enough to learn how to say I'm sorry. When I walk through, I think, this is what happens when you refuse to be placed where you don't belong. I keep the return check stub in my desk, not because I need a reminder of what they tried to take, but because it's proof of what I gave back to myself, a line I won't let anyone cross, not even for love. Especially not for love. So here's the truth I earned the hard way. You can't control whether people see your worth. You can decide what access they get to it. You can decide which rooms you will build and which you'll refuse to decorate. You can turn $65,000 into a lesson if you have to. You can turn a canceled wedding into a promise that the next time someone tries to shrink you to fit their picture, you'll step out of the frame and hand the camera to someone who knows how to focus. If you've ever had to choose between being liked and being respected, pick respect. The people who love you will learn how to do both. The rest can RSVP no.